Most people think they understand why smart individuals wind up isolated, assuming it comes from arrogance or emotional coldness. They imagine someone who decided they were above ordinary human bonds and picked solitude as a badge of honor. That assumption misses the mark entirely, and it quietly damages many people who carry something they cannot put into words. The true reason deeply intelligent people often find themselves alone has nothing to do with feeling superior. It connects to something far more painful. What happens when a mind that processes life at unusual depth keeps trying to bond in a world that mostly operates on the surface? The isolation builds not from deliberately choosing to be apart, but from never quite discovering the kind of connection that genuinely reaches them. Today, I want to reveal the real psychology behind this, not the glamorous version that makes intelligence sound romantic, but the honest one. If this is something you have experienced, you deserve to finally understand why. Their threshold for connection is different, not necessarily higher. Most people misunderstand this part. When a highly intelligent person struggles socially, the assumption is they have set impossible standards. But psychological research on cognitive complexity shows that people who process information at deeper levels experience conversation and bonding differently at a neurological level. For most people, pleasant small talk, shared laughter, and casual familiarity genuinely satisfies something real inside them. For someone with a highly complex mind, that same exchange can leave them feeling more isolated afterward than before. Not because the other person failed, but because their nervous system is built to find nourishment in a specific kind of depth that casual interaction simply cannot provide. Imagine being truly hungry and being offered something that looks exactly like food but has zero nutritional value. You could consume it endlessly and still be starving. That is what shallow connection feels like to this kind of mind. The painful irony is that from the outside it appears like pickiness or deliberate choice, when in truth it is closer to an incompatibility they never requested and never selected. They discovered early on that being fully themselves felt unsafe. This is the one that cuts deepest and the one almost nobody voices aloud. Most highly intelligent people did not reach adulthood feeling at ease with who they were. They arrived having already spent years learning through specific and often painful moments that the complete version of themselves was too much, too intense, too serious, too complicated, too stuck in their head, too focused on things others found exhausting. So they learned to manage themselves in social settings, to dial back, to simplify, to laugh at the expected moments and hold back thoughts that would make the room go silent. They became skilled at performing a version of themselves that was easier for others to tolerate. That performance, maintained over years, creates a very particular kind of loneliness. The loneliness of being surrounded by people who like you, who genuinely enjoy your company, who would call you a friend without hesitation, while knowing that none of them have ever encountered the real version of you. Not because you hid it with bad intentions, but because you learned before you were old enough to question the lesson that revealing all of yourself was a risk not worth taking. Pause here for a moment, because something needs to be acknowledged. If you are watching this and recognizing yourself, I want you to sit with something important. The loneliness you have been carrying is not a character defect. It is not evidence that something is broken inside you. It is not proof that you are too difficult or too complicated for anyone to ever truly know. It is the natural outcome of a mind that requires a specific kind of depth, living in a world where that depth is genuinely scarce. The fact that you have not found it yet does not mean it does not exist. It means you have not found it yet. The more they develop, the harder connection becomes. Here is something nobody warns you about. When you are young, the gap between how you process the world and how most people around you process it is narrower. Everyone is still figuring things out, still forming. And the differences exist but are not yet wide enough to fully isolate. But as highly intelligent people grow, they keep moving, keep reading, Keep questioning. Keep pulling on threads that most people release after the first tug. The people around them often plateau at a certain point. Not from lack of ability, but because they found a level of understanding sufficient for the life they wanted and stayed there. Over time, the gap widens, and the ideas question. And conversations they hunger for become increasingly difficult to find among people they already know. Building new connections from scratch grows harder with age. Not impossible, but genuinely more difficult. This means the loneliness does not naturally resolve with time. It requires something more intentional than simply waiting for the right person to show up. They are often surrounded by people, yet still completely alone. This confuses outside observers because highly intelligent people are frequently not socially isolated in the traditional sense. They have people, friendships, relationships, and they can navigate social situations with ease. They can be genuinely warm, funny, engaging, and present. But underneath all of that exists a layer that almost nobody reaches. A layer where their actual thinking lives. Their real doubts. The questions they cannot stop asking. The fears that fit neatly into no conversation they have ever had. Social psychology describes something called existential isolation. The experience of being fundamentally alone in how you perceive the world, regardless of how many people surround you physically. It is not the same as being friendless. It is having friends and still feeling in the quietest, most honest part of yourself that you have never been fully known by any of them. Every connection, however real, happens at a slight remove from who you actually are. And that remove is one of the loneliest distances a person can inhabit. They rarely ask for what they actually need. Highly intelligent people are often remarkably skilled at understanding what others need. They can read a room, sense discomfort before it is named, and deliver the right kind of support at the right moment with uncanny accuracy. But when it comes to their own needs, something shifts. They go quiet. Not because they do not know what they need, they usually know with painful clarity, but because asking for the kind of depth and understanding they genuinely crave feels like asking for too much. Like it is an unreasonable request. Like the honest version of what they need would burden others or expose them as impossibly difficult to love. So they find ways to partially meet their own needs through reading, thinking, finding meaning in work or solitude. They quietly accept a version of connection that is real and matters, but never fully reaches the part of them that is most alone. Psychology calls this chronic self-concealment. And it is one of the most direct paths to a loneliness that looks from every angle like a life working perfectly fine. None of these reasons involve arrogance, coldness, or a choice made from superiority. A threshold for connection that casual interaction cannot meet. Not because it is too high, but because it is specific, a learned habit of managing themselves into a version easier for others. And the loneliness of never being fully known. A gap that widens with growth rather than closing with time. The particular isolation of being surrounded by people while carrying something nobody reaches. And the quiet, persistent inability to ask for what they actually need. This is not a story about intelligence making someone better than those around them. It is a story about a specific kind of mind trying to find its people in a world where those people are genuinely hard to find. If any part of this describes something you have carried but never had language for, share which reason felt closest to your experience. Because recognizing it means you are not as alone in it as it has felt.